Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Rosen, and I am hiding in my kids' toy room trying to present my final project. So bear with me. I'm doing this presentation on the Manzanar National Historic Site. Kind of setting the stage, Manzanar is located in California at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains. You can see orientation-wise a map here of California. Manzanar is located here in the midst of the mountains, very remote from any larger cities. You can see Los Angeles down south here, Vegas to the right, and San Francisco and San Jose up to the north. So a very remote area of the United States on the West Coast. Setting the stage, 1941, following the attacks on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. There were serious sabotage and espionage concerns going on throughout the country. Anyone of Japanese descent was potentially someone that was a spy, so the government decided to take some action to try to limit the amount of risk for the country. As a result, the government ordered over 110,000 Japanese American and Japanese aliens to be relocated to these military-style camps across the country. One of the best kept over time is in Manzanar, which is where the National Historic Site is located. So it was previously referred to as the Manzanar War Relocation Center. This is a current rendering of what the site would have looked like at the time. So you can see all the barracks and just how enormous this site was. I think it's really just jaw-dropping to understand the amount of people this affected. Visiting Manzanar, there is a visitor center currently dedicated to telling the history of this site. There are personal narratives from survivors or people that lived there. There are audio-visual programs, different videos and recordings, photographs, and other artifacts that are on display here. This is an image of the actual visitor center, and then this is just one shot of what one of the display areas is like. This is recreating what a typical school would have been there. Outside of the visitor center, there are remains of some of the existing original buildings that have actually endured over time. A lot of it has been destroyed. There's historic orchards there. Manzanar is actually Spanish for apple orchard. I thought that was really interesting. So the people that lived there took to those orchards. There's also a camp cemetery. This is an image there that's kind of dedicated to the people that died there, and also Japanese gardens. So you can tour all of that. There are guided tours, and then there are also self-guided tours as well. What does it feel like to be a visitor there? I think through touring, the images and videos that I found access to, it's a very somber site. Not only are you kind of out in this remote, desolate area, there's just this aura of isolation and desolation. I think you can feel kind of the heaviness that the people there experienced. Most of the people, men, women, and children, were not spies. They were not doing anything against the United States, but because of their ethnicity, they were brought here. So I think the site does a good job of recognizing those truths without going into so much detail. They also recognize that this is an outside park, so there are different wildlife things that can be incorporated. As you tour some of the images, these are actually some photos that I found of someone that toured and took a really photojournalistic approach to it, so you could really get a sense of what it felt like to be there, approaching some of these barracks, and just imagine these in the dozens as you approach some of these, just how isolating and cold and sad. I mean, to be a child and this is your home, and to be uprooted from everything that you previously known to, sharing a house with hundreds of people, it just must have been overwhelming. Just get a sense of the sadness and the barbed wire that kept people in. So much of the story that I think makes this controversial is we look at the Auschwitz and all of these internment camps for the Jewish people and how horrific these places were outside of the United States and other countries. All these crimes that other countries did and other leaders and the Nazis, and we were doing similar things in our own ground. No, we were not trying to genocide out an entire generation of people or ethnicities, but we were confining our people beyond their rights and forcing them to live in confinement out of fear. So that's really telling as you look at some of these images. This is an image of inside where people had to share the kitchen. But people endured, you know, despite the confinement. I think the human spirit is so strong, and that's what was curious to me is some of the beautiful aspects. You know, you see the basketball courts and whatnot of where community was still built and people did what they needed to do to continue to survive. This is one display at the museum where you can see some of the visual arts going on to kind of reflect what did happen in some of these environments. You can see people gathering for meals within the eating quarters. This is a living quarters to see how many people are in one room environments. And these are American citizens, most of which did absolutely nothing wrong. So I think it's fantastic that the site is able to tell that truth. One really interesting aspect that I found was so many of the pictures that were documented of the time, any existing photos from the 1940s of when people were actually living here, to no surprise, were painted in such a light that this was everyday life, and it was great. You know, people were still learning and gathering and playing and cropping, and you know, no one wanted to reflect on the realities of what was going on here. The photography was very much meant to be painted in a positive light, and that's obvious through some of these imagery. A lot of the current controversy with this site is if the intentions of the national site are true. A lot of the people that endured living in these places, they took a lot with them as they left, and this wasn't a happy place for them. And you know, are the intentions of some of these organizations pure in wanting to retell the whole truth of what are going on or what had happened in these places? What this site and what this class has, not quite to the end there, taught me that we really need to look at history with a critical eye and approach it with really critical thinking and open mind to different angles and different perspectives of how we interpret history. It's all just a series of preferred preferences on how they want to retell a story and who's ever retelling it, and we have to consider that that is just a small portion of what actually happened. And different monuments and sites like the Manzanar Historic Site are just everyday reminders that you know, history is sometimes dark, but something that we need to acknowledge and have that influence our current way of thinking so that we can live an informed future. Thanks.